For a lot of us, gaming is our sanctuary. It's the place you go to unwind, to hang out with friends, to just escape the real world for a bit. You're behind a screen, in a world you can control, you feel safe. But what happens when that feeling of safety is just an illusion? What happens when something from the real world follows you in? Or worse, when something from the game follows you out?
Right, so let that sink in for a second. We're going to look at 3 true stories that are seriously chilling. Stories where that digital wall came crashing down and the game followed these people right to their front door.
So this first one, it doesn't even start online. It starts with a totally random, everyday encounter. It's about a 17-year-old gamer from Arizona who's about to find out that the scariest monster isn't some final boss, but just a stranger you happen to pass in the grocery store.
Picture this. It's a completely normal Friday. His parents are out of town, he's just turned in a paper for school, runs a quick errand for his mom, and then it's time to settle in for a long night of Call of Duty with his buddy. I mean, it's a routine we all know. Everything is exactly how it's supposed to be.
So he's a couple hours deep into the game, and he heads downstairs to make some pasta. He's just sitting there, eating in the totally quiet house, when he hears it. Just a single distinct thump from upstairs. Was that a footstep? Nah, couldn't be, right? It was probably nothing.
So he tries to just, brush it off. But then this little thought creeps in. He lived in a safe neighborhood, so he had this really bad habit of leaving the front door unlocked all the time. On a total whim, he gets up, walks over to the door, and locks it. Just that one small thing that shows, deep down, some part of him knew something was really, really wrong. He heads back up to his room, throws on his noise-canceling headset, and dives right back into the game. After a match, he glances over at his open doorway. Nothing. A minute later, he looks again, and something feels off. He spins his chair all the way around, and there's a man, sitting perfectly still on his bed, just smiling at him. After a terrifying chase through the house, the intruder just calmly walks back to the doorway and asks him, in this weird, stuttering voice, if he could play too.
Okay, so that first story was just a horrible, random coincidence. This next one, though? Oh no. This one was born and raised entirely inside the game. This is about a 13-year-old kid back in 2010 getting his first taste of an online romance and about to learn a really brutal lesson about who you can trust.
In this online game, this MMORPG, he meets another player named Medusa. They started talking for hours every day, sharing all kinds of personal stuff, and yeah, he fell hard for Teresa, the 15-year-old girl he was sure was behind the avatar. He sent her a kinda cringy selfie. She sent back a picture of this really cute girl. For him, this was the real deal.
So naturally, they made a plan to meet up. His parents happened to be gone for the weekend. Perfect timing. He cleaned his room, practiced what he was going to say, and then the text he'd been waiting for all day finally hits his phone. 2 simple words. She's here. He bolts to the front door, looks through the peephole, but there's nobody there. He even steps outside for a second. The street is totally empty. He messages her, completely confused. She texts back, saying she must be at the wrong house. Okay. A few minutes later, another text. I'm here. He writes back, ring the bell so I know you're at the right house. And then, ding dong, the doorbell rings. His heart is pounding. He runs back to the door, looks through the peephole again. Still, no one. And then, a hand reaches out and just knocks. He keeps looking, and in that one instant, his entire world just shatters. A short, bald, really creepy-looking adult man steps right in front of the peephole and says through the door, "Hey, it's Medusa."
And the man didn't just leave. No, he went around the house, started knocking on the kid's bedroom window, trying to tell him they had a connection. It was only when the boy's older brother showed up with his friends that the man was finally confronted. And his excuse? Get this. He said the whole thing was just a learning lesson for the boy about talking to strangers online. Yeah, right.
All right, let's move on to our final story, and you can see how this all escalates. We've seen a random encounter, and we've seen a calculated deception. Now we're looking at a direct, violent consequence for something that happened completely inside a video game. This is what happens when trash talk spills out of the game and into your living room, fast.
So there's this gamer named Luke, home alone, playing Apex Legends with his friend Brandon. Everything's totally normal until Brandon gets a super weird text from a random number. All it says is, "Look out the window." Luke kind of glances over, and sure enough, there's a guy just standing outside, facing away from the house.
A second later, another text comes through to Brandon. He just took a picture of you. And then, Brandon's voice just cuts out. He's gone from the party. A moment later, Luke gets a new party invite from Brandon's gamertag. He accepts it, thinking it's his friend. But it's not. It's this deep, angry voice that says, "Come outside right now, or I will come in." He looks back at the window, and the man is right there, his face all red, hands bloody, just pounding on the glass. Total panic. Luke scrambles for his phone to call 911, and he sees this, 1% battery. He barely has enough time to mouth the words, "There's a man trying to break into my house," before the phone just dies. And then he hears it. The window shatters, and the man starts crawling inside.
So why? Why this absolutely terrifying home invasion? The reason is so stupid it's almost hard to believe. About an hour earlier, Luke had killed this guy in a match of Apex Legends and, trash-talked him a little. That's it. That's the whole reason. For that, this guy found his address, found his friend's phone number, and came to his house to physically attack him. Luckily, the police got there fast, and the attacker was arrested and actually convicted.
So you hear these three stories. What's the common thread? I mean, on the surface, they're pretty different, right? A random stalker, a predator, a vengeful gamer. But they all point to the same scary truth. The digital world and the physical world, they're not separate anymore. Not really. The line has gotten so blurry, and that feeling of anonymity online can make people do some really dangerous things.
And you can really see the escalation here. Story number 1 was basically a horrifying coincidence. The game was just where the victim happened to be. Story 2 was a deliberate deception, using the anonymity of the game to groom a kid. But story 3, that was direct retaliation. It's this thing psychologists call de-individuation, where you lose your sense of self online, feel less accountable, and that feeling of being disrespected in a game led directly to real-world violence.
Look, it's easy to hear these stories and just get freaked out. And yeah, they're scary. But I think the better question is, what can we actually learn from this? How do we keep enjoying the games we love without putting ourselves at risk in the real world?
The lessons here are pretty clear. First, every little detail you share online can be a breadcrumb leading someone to your door, just like in story number 2. Second, that anonymity online, it doesn't just protect you, it makes predators and aggressive people feel like they can do whatever they want. Third, digital beef doesn't always stay digital. The trash talk in story 3 is proof of that. And finally, like we saw in the very first story, sometimes the best defense is the simplest one. Just being aware of your real-world habits, like, locking your door.
And really, that's what it all boils down to, isn't it? We spend all this time and energy setting up digital firewalls and protecting our online accounts. But these stories force us to ask a much more basic question about the actual physical locks on our doors and the personal locks we put on our private information. It's definitely something to think about next time you log on.